Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Masquerade by O.O. Sangoyomi. This is a book that's coming out July 2nd, 2024 from Forge Books. It's a historical fiction kind of fantasy. I received this art from NetGalley in exchange for a fair review. Quick-paced, vibrant, and impeccably detailed, Masquerade is as entertaining as it is compelling. Before I start, though, I want to say that I tried to look up how to pronounce stuff, but some of it I couldn't find, so please forgive me if I'm wrong. Also, please correct me in the comments with the correct pronunciation. As you know, I can't pronounce anything. I also learned why the prince's pet name for Ododo was Flower, because that's what her name means. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. What is this about? Adodo's hometown of Timbuktu has been conquered by the warrior king of Yorubaland. Already shunned as a social pariahs, living conditions for Adodo and the other women in her blacksmith guild grow even worse under Yoruba rule. Then Adodo is abducted. She is whisked across the Sahara to the capital city of Sengote, where she is shocked to discover that her kidnapper is none other than the vagrant who had visited her guild just days prior. But now that he is swathed in riches rather than rags, Adodo realizes he is not a vagrant at all. He is a warrior king, and he has chosen her to be his wife. In a sudden change of fortune, Adodo soars to the very heights of society. But after a lifetime of subjugation, the power that saturates this world of battle and political savvy becomes too enticing to resist. As tensions with rival states grow, revealing elaborate schemes and enemies hidden in plain sight, Adodo must defy the cruel king she has been forced to wed by reforging the shaky loyalties of the court in her favor, or risk losing everything, including her life. If you love historical fiction based on myth, then this is the book for you. I actually thought the book was a fantasy going in, like a full-on fantasy. And while there is something that seems fantastical at one point, I don't believe it really was intended to be that way. I'm not really sure why this is marked as fantasy. Perhaps because the setting is more inferred than based on solid facts, and there's like kind of a reference to like the blacksmiths being magical, but it's not really like flushed out, so I don't know. Anyway, it didn't matter at all because the story was so compelling. This novel is set in 15th century West Africa, something I will admit I don't have a huge knowledge base on. I didn't know much about anything going in, really. This book delivers, though, on telling you not only about everyday things like food and clothing, but fashion, weaponry, politics, and social customs. It was very easy to kind of be brought into this city and this culture and understand. The descriptions were absolutely fantastic. I could picture everything perfectly. It's extremely well done in that regard. I will say I did know going into the story that Timbuktu was a real place. The reason people sometimes think it's not is because it was very hard to get to in the olden days, so it took on this sort of like mythical quality. I also kind of forgot going in, though because I read this blurb and requested it like months ago, that this book was loosely based on the Persephone myth, which I am in love with. I mean, most people really like that myth. Especially the workings of it that make it kind of romantic. I am very much waiting for this book to come out early next year. Oh, yeah. Anyway, having read this novel, I can see how this could be, like this myth was incorporated, though the end result is quite different. In fact, I would argue that this book has more in common with Furiosa than it does Hades and Persephone. I went and saw the Furiosa movie a week ago, and I really liked it. I didn't like it as much as Fury Road. Fury Road, like, it's one of my favorite movies. But yeah, it was good. It was entertaining. I really liked it. Anyway, back to this story. I'm also not sure why the blurb for Masquerade calls the prince a cruel king. He's more just like a spoiled himbo than horrific. Also, she's not really forced to wed him, so what the heck, whoever wrote this blurb. Anyway, the novel had me hooked until around 80%, when it started to lean heavy into what I found to be kind of drama. Rather than focus on the subtle political maneuverings, the story became saturated and leveling up Adodo to heights that felt a bit over the top. Don't get me wrong, I thought this book was absolutely fantastic. I just found the ending a bit rushed. And so I kept looking over there because there's an adorable little chipmunk outside my window, and I'm just like, oh. Anyway, this is a wild review. Adodo is a wonderful character. The story follows her, as you heard in the blurb, as she is kidnapped and made part of the king's court. The thing is, there is no forced marriage in this novel, if you are triggered by that. The king wants her to marry him, but she refuses. This was one of the best aspects of the novel. She is wary of the man's reasons behind choosing her, as she would be in real life, and refuses to accept her new life until she's convinced that he is sincere or that it's not going to kind of like entrap her into something that is worse off than she was before. This book is not a romance. In fact, I'd say it's the antithesis of one. It shows how marriage, especially for women in lower economic and social standings, who have no hope of elevating themselves out of this due to society itself, is a business. Adodo weighs the pros and cons in this way. Despite her young age, she's 19, she is shown to be calculating and intelligent. In fact, this calculation and intelligence and self-esteem are what propels her through the novel, and it comes back again and again. In fact, it has to do a lot with her kind of arc that comes up later that I'm not going to talk about because it's kind of a spoiler. So yeah, she's a fantastically drawn out character. I understood her completely. I liked her. I thought she was realistic, and I rooted for her. I will say, though, she's almost too good at everything all the time. She's not exactly a Mary Sue, but she does seem to have a great number of natural skill sets. In this way, she felt a little YA to me, though not enough to kind of turn the story in that vein. This is definitely an adult novel. The other characters were great. My favorite was Rotimi, a side character. Arimo the king was rather insufferable in truth, but I think he's kind of supposed to be. You know, he's rich, spoiled, he's self-indulged. Of course he's insufferable. The other women, Kolu in particular, were layered and likable and interesting as well. One other thing this book nails is showing how systemic prejudice and institutionalized sexism are the true villains of the story. Adodo is a blacksmith, something that a certain small sect of women are in the novel, and despite it being just being a blacksmith, there's some kind of like a mystical aspect to it that they're perceived to have anyway. And they also have great value in society given that, you know, they make weapons and other metal items, but they're treated as secondary citizens because they are women, and not just because they're women, but because they are women who have professions. So women that don't need a man tied to them to give them status in society. They're seen as kind of pariahs, or like some people that exist outside of the social norms, and so they are, you know, looked down upon and kind of shunted to like sections of the city where they're kind of off on their own. So sexism is a great focus in this novel, and it is wonderful to see Adodo break through some of these glass ceilings. The story itself is exciting and hard to put down. The pacing is a bit fast. I wish it had taken time to slow down and really show us the political intrigue aspects of Adodo's story. But for the final 10% of the book to work, other things were required, I suppose. So yeah, like it all made sense. I just kind of wish it was a bit slower, actually. Overall, though, an entrancing lyrical novel that manages to weave together several major themes into a beautiful tapestry. This book is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Yeah, thank you to the publisher for the e-arc. As I said, I really appreciated it. Thanks.